welcome everybody and officially call the meeting to order. This is an open meeting of the Broadcasting Board of Governors. This meeting, as usual, is being held in compliance with the Government in the Sunshine Act. The live webcast will also be available for later viewing on the BBG website, www.bbg.gov. We actually, as I mentioned, we're holding today's meeting in the auditorium here at the Cohen Building in Washington, D.C., in order to accommodate what I think is a pretty exciting group of guests that we have coming in a couple minutes. The discussion is going to feature a number of award-winning media and marketing executives who will share their insights on how to tell stories to global audiences in this digital age. We had a chance to spend time with some of them last night, and they're really committed to what we're doing here, and I think they can really help a lot of us in what we're trying to do. As I mentioned, I'm joined on stage this morning by Governor Weinstein and Governor Meehan. On the phone, we have Governor Armstrong and Governor Crocker, and I will note for the record when Governor Stengel is able to join. I understand he's going to be here momentarily. In September, the board announced its intent to name Andy Lack CEO of U.S. International Media. We've submitted his paperwork and are still waiting finalization of his appointment. Expect him to be with us at the board meeting in December, which will feature a deep dive into the International Broadcasting Bureau. And then once again in February, we'll start over with the services with VOA. I see David Enzor in the audience, so VOA will be up in February. Before I turn to the business before the board today, I'd like to draw attention to the threats to that our journalists have faced since our last meeting. I'd like to note, by the way, when I originally saw the draft for this meeting, this was quite a long section, so it's a bit discouraging to see what's happening to press freedom all around the world right now. And we actually had to shorten this section down into regions now, which is a really bad trend. So hopefully this is going to turn around. We're obviously operating in media environments where authoritarian countries struggling to control both information and their citizens seek to censor objective voices and crack down on civil society, including independent press. We see this in Azerbaijan, where authorities recently detained and charged RFE-RL correspondent Hadija Ismailova with libel. According to Ms. Ismailova, this is a consequence of her reporting on corruption within the Azeri government. She has been blocked from traveling outside the country. In Crimea, RFE-RL journalists have repeatedly been harassed for their reporting on sensitive issues. And I see John and Nenad here in the audience today, so I acknowledge them here. In Cuba, Radio TV Marti contributors have been detained and activists have been threatened just for speaking to our reporters. In China, police tried to intimidate VOA correspondent Fred Wang with 2 hours of questioning following his news report about the Uyghurs. Also in the Middle East, journalists are being jailed under fabricated charges. ISIL are executing journalists, and Al-Hurr's Bashar Fahmy, who disappeared while reporting in Aleppo, Syria, has been missing now for over 2 years. I'd like to note for the record, Governor Stengel has joined us. Welcome, Governor Stengel, to the podium. Despite all of this, our journalists keep reporting on the forefront of major global events, and our staff ensures that content is being delivered to audience who critically need it. As Russian media increasingly spews propaganda and misinformation, our networks have launched a program to deliver the straight facts to Russian language audiences. During the Hong Kong protests, the BBG has been the only news source that people on mainland China could turn for uncensored images, streaming live from Hong Kong on our Telstar 18 satellite. I also want to mention we had our RFA board meeting earlier this morning, and it's very both discouraging, obviously, what's going on in that region, but exciting to see the things that RFA are doing. They actually showed us some screenshots of a program on a video stream they're sharing with VOA where they're running their audio program, and while they're running their audio programming at RFA, they're streaming on video all the forbidden Twitter feeds, so people can read the Twitter feeds on the video while listening to our audio coverage, which is extremely creative, and commend RFA for that creativity, and also commend VOA and RFA for working together, on this, because it's obviously a critical region, and it looks like we're doing a good job there, which we're proud of. Switching regions and crises, there's plenty of them these days. As the Ebola crisis continues, VOA correspondents have been reporting from the front lines of the crisis in Guinea and Liberia to counter disinformation about the virus and bring the world news from the understaffed medical centers and affected villages. As a board, we strongly believe in the power of a free press. We are grateful to all of our journalists working from our networks who report the truth in danger zones across the world, despite threats they face throughout the course of their work. It would be remiss for us to meet here in D.C. And not mark the passing of one of the most influential people in American journalism, Ben Bradlee, who died last week at the age of 93. His funeral was yesterday here in D.C. To be a great leader, you must be forward-thinking, make brave editorial decisions, support your reporters, and stand by good stories, and above all, maintain a sense of humor. Ben Bradlee did all of these things. He's a true icon in this industry and our industry. President Obama observed that, quote, for Benjamin Bradlee, journalism was more than a profession. It was a public good vital to our democracy, which completely struck home to all of us here at the BBG. We believe the same thing here at the BBG, and we pledge to carry Bradlee's spirit and journalistic standards with us as we support freedom and democracy around the world. And so we wanted to quickly note at this meeting the passing of this true, great global icon. Okay, so now we're going to turn to the business before the board today. We now have 6 governors, which satisfy the board's quorum requirement. The board may conduct business based on a majority vote since we have a quorum present. On October 16, the board received by email materials for the consent agenda, allowing sufficient time for all governors to review prior to this meeting. I did not receive any comments from any governors, and we actually have 2 things on our consent agenda today, so it's quite light consent agenda. One of them is the minutes for the August 13 meeting, and the second is a resolution proposing meeting dates in 2015. On the meeting dates for 2015, I'd just like to note for the record that we intend to do one of our meetings in 2015 in Prague at RFERL, and we'll be adjusting the schedule, once we sort out that date. But for now, we're going to pass these meeting dates, and then we'll amend them at such time as we lock down that schedule with the team at RFERL and with the board members. So, do any governors have any comments or changes on the 2 consent agenda items? Michael?
Mr. Chairman, are we going to have the committees meet in the alternating months? Is that still the plan?
We're still going to have the committees meet in the alternating months, yes. And we haven't set those dates yet. Okay. Any comments, questions? Ryan, Matt, on the phone, anybody? Okay, then hearing no comments, I'd like to move that we adopt the consent agenda. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Governor Meehan. All those in favor of the consent agenda, please say aye. 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 Any opposed? The consent agenda is adopted. Okay, turning to our second agenda item, at the advisory committee meeting in September, the committee discussed 2 possible new special committees. The committee agreed to establish a special committee on the future of VOA in the 21st century. A proposed resolution to establish the special committee was provided to the board for its consideration. We actually did receive a number of comments for the board, and we've kind of circulated, I believe, a new amended resolution, which was just circulated last night, which I know does not follow our practice of giving enough time. So if first I'd like to ask, is there any board member who doesn't feel like they've had sufficient time enough to review the new amended resolution? Okay, hearing none, is there any, I'm going to say a couple things about the resolution, but before I do, are there any comments or changes to the amended resolution that was circulated? Michael?
I appreciate the first version and the second version of the desire to create this committee to look at the VOA in the 21st century. But as we said yesterday, and I just wanted to say it here in the open meeting as well, in my 4.5 years on this board, I've struggled with mightily, and we've all talked about this both privately and openly. We do business in 100 countries. We have 57 of them have VOA and surrogate operations there. And a 70-year legacy agency like VOA has grown in different ways long before all of us got onto this board. And I do think it's important to get the new management with Andy Lack and you, my colleagues here on the board who came about a year and a half ago, to get to the bottom of where we are. I mean, VOA acts as a surrogate in Africa, as far as I'm concerned, and we don't. The traditional surrogates don't really have a role there, and that's the role that they've evolved to, and that's sort of the nature of the beast. It just, you know, as we sat here a year ago, we talked about 12 other hotspots, and then today you just went through 12 different hotspots, and so we're trying to bring a legacy agency like this one through a digital media age, through a very complex world foreign policy environment. So I would hope that regardless of what the language is here, that the committee would take a good hard look and get to the brass tacks of at least moving forward. I know it's very hard to change, and I think Undersecretary Stengel points this out with his fresh time here in the government, that it's really easy to put new programs on the board. It's very hard to take old programs off the board while you're putting new ones on. So I hope this committee, with however this resolution goes, has that as part of its construction.
I totally agree, and there actually is a clause in the resolution, as you know, which talks about looking at VOA in the context of all of our other services and in areas where we have more than one service, trying to figure out what the right approach should be to that region. I'll echo a little bit, Governor Meehan, what you said in that since my time on the board, which has been just over a year, a lot of time has been spent on structure, how we manage our meetings, how we govern our entity. I think we've done a good job as a board of making a more professionally managed organization. We've talked a lot about structure and where our entities are and how they're structured. What we haven't spent a lot of time talking about as a board or in these meetings is content, right? Which ultimately is all that matters to somebody who turns on a radio or an audio device or a television or looks at their smartphone. And what I love about Andy Lack coming in and some of the focus of the panel today is that some of what we should be doing is putting aside structural issues and actually looking at how do we actually influence people in these hotspots around the world with content and figuring out the best content strategy, and then we can try to figure out what entities and how to make it work and what's the best transmission strategy. I actually think what we're doing today to cover the Hong Kong protest is a perfect example of how it should work, where we've figured out the best content strategy. It's brilliant, VOA and RFA working together to provide the best mix of content, and if we can kind of take that model across the world, we'll be A, more efficient in how we operate, to your point, but B, I think we'll be more effective in the content we provide. So I echo that, and I think one of the challenges here is to also figure out, VOA's charter is sacrosanct in this building and around the world, and to all of us, but it's a different world now than when VOA was established. And so what I'm excited about this committee doing is working with David Ensor and his team and with people around the world to refine what VOA is, which will further help us figure out this content strategy across the world. So on the phone, are there any comments or questions on this resolution? Ryan, Matt?
Nothing to add. Nothing particularly to add. The present reality we have in a growing part of the world, a war on information. So how does the VOA, as you got into, fit into the U.S. International media in this changing landscape of media, changing definition of media, and changing consumers' relationship with the media? And how do we strengthen the brand of VOA? So, echo your comments.
Great. Ryan, anything to add? Okay. Hearing no more comments, just as at the under the bylaws, as chairman, I'm authorized to appoint a special committee of the board. So we're going to vote on the resolution in a second. Assuming the resolution passes, this board, this committee for the future of VOA in the 21st century will be chaired by Matt Armstrong. Thank you, Matt. I will be on the committee. As of now, no other governors have volunteered to be on the committee, but I'm certain that others will. So in coming days, we will fill out this committee under Matt's leadership. So I move that we adopt the amended resolution to establish a special committee on the future of VOA in the 21st century. Is there a second? Second. second by Governor Weinstein. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed or abstain? All right, the motion carries. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
if the U.S. Senate decides that I'm still here, I'd like to participate in that committee as well.
Great. Let note that we now have a third member of that committee, Governor Meehan.
Mr. Chairman, this is Ryan.
Ken as well.
I
Yes, Ryan.
record my as an abstention because I never received the revised text.
Okay, so please note that Ryan abstains from it, and we'll make sure we get you the proposed text. Sorry about that, Ryan. Governor Weinstein has also volunteered, so we now have a 4-person committee. Thank you guys for that. We're about to turn to public comment, which is our next section of the meeting, but before we do, I would like to just quickly acknowledge from the podium here Lynn Weil, where is Lynn? Lynn's somewhere here. There's Lynn, right up here in the front row. I believe Lynn was one of the first people from BBG I met, and she has done a wonderful job as Director of Communications and External Affairs for the BBG. And as most of you know, she's going to be leaving the BBG in early November to take on a new exciting job for the U.S. Global Leadership Coalition. So we congratulate Lynn for her new job, thank her for all her work here, and we'll be rooting for you in your new position, Lynn. So thank you. So I'm excited today because...
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
This is Matt. So if I can just add to that. So Lynn and I have known each other for several years in the context of public diplomacy before she started jumping jobs and made her way to BBG. I just want to extend, again, a thank you to Lynn as well, and congratulations, and look forward to collaborating and working with you when you're over there. So thank you for your service, and value our friendship, and look forward to the future for you.
Thank you, Matt. Governor Meehan.
Sorry, I'll be quick, but since I was part of the committee that helps recruit Lynn to move from Dan Scribney's job to the job that she has here, I feel like I have a personal stake, and thank you for your time and your service here. You came in a difficult transition where the board members go up and down, and I appreciated your professionalism, and I'll always remember when you and Brian and I went to Saudi Arabia and put a stake in the ground for the BBG, and both symbolically, literally, and all the work that you did to make that be such a successful trip for me and my colleagues. So thank you for your service, and good luck in your new position.
Great. Thank you, Governor Meehan. So moving on to the next section, we have a public comment. Ever since this board took over, we've established a public comment section of our board meeting where we have a limit of 10 speakers of 3 minutes each. My dream is to get to 10 speakers of 3 minutes each. So I think it's important that the public come tell us what they think. I think since we joined the board here, this is now the record. We have 4 people signed up today, and I want to thank all of them who have signed up and urge people in future meetings to come speak to us. So we have, I believe, all 4 here with us today. So let me call you one at a time, and if you could please step up. Do we have a handheld microphone, or where is the microphone? I think is in the audience. I think we have a handheld down in the audience. Lynn Weil, as one of her last duties, is the handheld. So let me first invite Ann Noonan to step forward and address the board. Thank you for being here again, Ann. And please introduce yourself first for the people on the phone, and then address the board.
Is it on?
Is the mic on? It doesn't sound like it's on.
Okay.
There, you're on.
Okay. My name's Ann Noonan. I'm the Executive Director for the Committee for U.S. International Broadcasting. CUSIB was honored to meet with the BBG's CEO designee Andy Lack in New York on October 8th. We discussed some of our immediate concerns about the need for change at the BBG. We offered our assistance and advice and wished him well in his new role. Along with some CUSIB members, Mr. Weijing Sheng also joined us on October 8th. I'm delighted that he is here today to speak about how and why VOA and RFA China services must improve. As Hong Kong's umbrella revolution began, CUSIB was made aware of satellite TV programming changes made without any advance notice to audiences in China or even VOA China branch staff. We remain alarmed by any possible efforts to eliminate shortwave and medium wave radio inside China, and we want to know why VOA China language broadcasting services have not been expanded and repeat programs not updated with live news as Hong Kong students and democracy seekers continue to press for justice. Since all of the BBG governors present here today were also present in June in Miami, except I think Michael was on the phone, when I spoke about the situation of the illegally and improperly fired workers and journalists from the Office of Cuba Broadcasting, I have to ask, why have 4 months passed without reinstatement or back pay or any remedy for these people? I was told by people in this room that this is a priority, but I'm also told by those who are victimized that you just don't care, and I believe them. The agency's lawyers are showing the world their competency to frustrate the situation. They also show their lack of compassion. I'm appealing to each governor here to make it your priority. On December 4th, one of these OCB workers expects to lose his home if immediate relief for his financial situation does not become available. If this happens, it will be quite a Christmas story about how the U.S. federal government's bureaucracy has cost a man and his family their home. After hearing from friends, I would like to add to my recommendations to Andy Lack that he make it a priority to meet with the ordinary broadcasters in Washington and in Prague to gather information from them firsthand about the concentration of power that exists. CUSIB hopes that he will be able to bring some fresh air into these broadcasting areas. The ongoing gross mismanagement of Voice of America was most recently seen in their call for volunteer journalists to take the experimental Ebola vaccine so they could report about the experience. If this doesn't show the need for change in senior management, I don't know what can. Finally, when is CUSIB going to receive the thousands of pages that were paid for last year in a FOIA request? I don't want to leave these questions in the air. Please email me, call me, let me know. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ann, and thanks for being here and addressing the committee. Next, I'd like to call to the microphone another one of our friends, Alan Heil. Once again, Alan, please introduce yourself for the people on the phone.
Alan Heil, a former deputy director of VOA and a VOA historian of sorts. Mr. Chairman and members of the board, I guess it was 60 years ago, last summer, that I was a lowly copy boy at the Newark Evening News in New Jersey. And up there on the wall was John Ruskin's not too often noticed quote, but it certainly applies to us. Upon a thought there fell a drop of ink. It made not hundreds, but thousands think. Imagine the thrill that I had earlier this year when we learned that more than 200 million people listen to U.S. international broadcasting. 164 million of them, 4 out of the 5 that the 5 networks you supervise have, in this case, 4 out of the 5 of those who follow them are VOA listeners. I think there are a lot of myths that are circulating abroad that I'd like to sort of set right a little bit. Myth number 1, VOA is dysfunctional. I beg to differ. It can't be dysfunctional if it reaches 164 million listeners, viewers, internet readers, users of cell phones increasingly around the world, each and every week. I think also that I would say that in all of this, when you look at the events of the day, what is VOA covering this very day, in this very year? You have, of course, those millions around the globe who viewed on satellite TV, on their mobile devices, they heard on their radios, Three exclusive interviews with the Secretary of State in this very year. And what did the interviews cover? They didn't cover just anniversaries. They covered Ebola, Afghanistan, ISIL, the nuclear talks with Iran. Then there are those TV viewers who are treated to on-scene accounts as VOA reporters ventured into Syria to witness the ongoing battle for Kobani that's going on even this very day. Then there are those in Africa and elsewhere who watched or heard more than 100 VOA reports in succession, public service messages on Ebola. And finally, those around the world enlightened last week by VOA correspondent Jim Malone's superb on-scene interviews about the Senate race in North Carolina. VOA is clearly on the move in 2014. Then there's that other myth, the wasteful duplication among the 5 networks. In fact, duplication in content is actually minimal, at least if you look at the English websites every day. You'll find that there's precious little of that. And where there are strikingly different and often complementary programs listed on each of these websites. VOA alone also reaches most of the hemisphere, Indonesia, Sub-Saharan Africa, and portions of West Asia exclusively. So a thorough, impartial, concurrent analysis of all 5 BBG networks does make sense, but it should be, I believe, of all 5. The world is aflame more than at any time since 9/11. ISIL, Russia, and Ukraine, and Ebola all demand the full attention, as has been said here, content-wise, of both the management and the program producers. It's essential today to focus on content, not org charts. The board is to be commended for the selection as CEO of Andy Lack, a highly qualified and energetic executive. It raises in my mind one suggestion. Might the board let him determine the scope and timing of any new surveys that are to take place, as much as they may be needed? As Edward R. Murrow once said of all U.S. overseas international and cultural programming, our goal is not to capture men's minds, but to free them. That's the core mission of VOA and the other networks. They are performing it well for growing and newly empowered audiences, and they are working together to do so. I hope the board will support and enhance this noble effort that means so much to the nation's security. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan, and also it wouldn't be a great BBG board meeting without a quote from Edward E. Murrow. So thank you very much for having that. So let me now welcome to the stage Wei Xing Shang, who's here, and please once again introduce yourself to the audience on the phone.
Please introduce yourself as well. Thank you.
Welcome.
首先介绍我自己，我是中国民主运动海外联席会议主席，也就是中国反对派的领袖之一。
First, I want to introduce myself. I'm the chairman of the Overseas Chinese Democracy Coalition, and I'm one of the leaders for the Chinese opposition to the communist regime.
我感谢刚才2位发言的朋友，他们说了很多我想说的话。
I express gratitude to the 2 friends who just spoke. They said what I wanted to say.
1994年。 江开瑞参议员到北京去，代表克林顿总统找我谈论要不要建立自由亚洲电台的问题。
Back in 1994, former Senator John Kerry, who went to Beijing and talked to me about to establish Radio Free Asia should or should not.
那时候我第一次听说了你们的基本原则是言论自由的补充。
That was the first time I heard about you, and one of your principles is to as a supplement to the freedom of speech.
刚才我听主席先生也提到了这个原则。
And I heard the similar talk by the chairman too.
但是我十几年来在美国听到具体的工作人员们谈论更多的是他们要言论自由平衡。
However, in the past more than 10 years, I heard the detail the people works for the agency talked more about the balance of the news and the information.
他们的意思就是说，我们还要给共产党一定的发言的机会。
And that sounds like we will give the rooms for the communists to speak what they wanted.
我在那个很多听众向我反映的问题也是，他们觉得美国之音和自由亚洲电台越来越讲了更多的共产党的语言。
What I have heard from the audience of both Radio Free Asia and Voice of America, they also reflected to me. They also reported to me seems that both stations has been speaking more and more in line with the communist China.
他们给了那些替共产党宣传的人更多的时间，而且甚至共产党的情报机关的头头、研究人员都在这儿有发言的机会。
They offered the people in favor of the communist regime much more time on their broadcasting, and even to the heads of their intelligence officers to speak in their stations.
这么多年来，美国之音和自由亚洲之所以丢掉了很多中国的观众，原因就在这儿。
Recent years, both VOA and Radio Free Asia lost a lot of audience due to this reason.
他们共产党的宣传已经是非常非常多了，他们不希望听到这两个电台也在替共产党宣传，他们希望听到的是共产党不说的那些东西。
Communist China has a very powerful propaganda machine all over, and they have heard enough of propaganda. They want to hear something different.
所以我觉得言论自由的补充这个原则非常重要，但是在具体工作中，我觉得他们没有坚持这个原则。
So I think it's very important that you become a supplement for the freedom of speech. Unfortunately, I did not see this to be truly carried out in the detailed work.
一方面是因为一些领导他们听不懂中文的广播，他们也头脑里也有一些不太好的观念。
One reason is some of the leaders do not understand Chinese, and they do not have quite a rightful concept.
另外很重要一条，我觉得人员的问题也非常重要。有很多的工作人员，他们的头脑并不是站在民主自由这方面，而是很同情共产党。
The second reason is because the detailed work, the staff and the workers, some people are not quite stand on the camp of democracy and freedom. Some of them are very sympathetic to the communist regime in China.
这不是我的意见，这是很多听众向我反映的，他们在拼命的指责我，认为我没有去帮助这两个电台，让受到人们的欢迎。
This is not even my opinion only. It's really I'm simply relay to what I heard from audience. They even criticize me for not being able to encourage you to do the right way.
我觉得很重要一个问题是你们这个 BBG 的机构缺少一个监督的机构。
I think one of the very important reasons that could be corrected is that BBG is a lack of agent to monitoring what you are broadcasting.
听众是如何反映的，如何赞扬或者如何批评这两个电台或者某一些播音员，这些问题都是他们自己在监督。这和共产党的媒体差不多了， 自我监督，这是不是真正的监督？
This supervising monitoring a committee or whatever agent should be independent because right now what the audience reaction, the positive, the negative reaction, as well as the criticisms, various things, it's your own station is monitoring instead of independently monitored.
Excuse me, can we wrap up because I appreciate your
好
comments,
的，
but we
好的
can-，
我觉得监督机制非常重要，应该有一个比较客观的监督机构。
So I think the monitoring system is very important. That you need one independent and be very objective.
另外，我要强调的一个问题就是广播节目不应该消减，而且要加强。
Finally, I want to emphasize that the shortwave broadcasting should not be cut off. Instead, you should be enhancing it.
中国虽然有2亿的电脑用户，但是这在中国人口中只占到不到1/5。
Also, there is 200 millions of population in China have internet, but that's not even 20% of the whole population.
占人口大多数的穷人，他们只能听广播，而且他们喜欢听广播。
Most of the poor people in China can only listen to shortwave broadcasting, and that's all they could afford.
如果没有广播，那么我觉得，美国之音和自由亚洲不会有那么多的听众。
Without shortwave broadcasting, I'm afraid that both VOA and Radio Free Asia would lose a lot of your audience.
好，谢谢大家。
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Finally, I'd like to invite up to the stage Gregory Burns. Once again, please introduce yourself for the people on the phone.
Good morning, folks. My name is Greg Burns. I represent Local 1418 at the Voice of America. I thank you for this opportunity to address the board this morning. I'm a bit disappointed. I think we have 3 unions at the Voice of America. We feel it's vital that on an annual basis we have the opportunity to sit down with you and you hear it straight from us instead of outside sources. We appreciate QSIB, but when you have anonymous sources hitting the Voice of America, that hurts me and it hurts everyone that is dedicated, that took an oath to, I've had a career here and I'm proud that Alan Heil has followed, my career since graduating from the University of Maryland with a degree in radio and TV. And that's what the Voice of America is about. And I think the issues that we are dealing with, you are magnetized because at the Voice of America, you do have unions that are able to bring out the differences between contract workers and career workers. And I'd like to throw out an element today that may not go over well, but I'm advocating, and I think the unions would advocate, that all of USIM be federalized and the thought of defederalization not be considered. And I hope that between now and our next board meeting that we can meet and discuss the one item that's out there is HR 4490. And there are elements within that bill that we feel the charter that currently exists, it doesn't have to be the whole charter, but there are important elements of that charter that the unions feel have to be incorporated in the future of the Voice of America. Thank you.
Thanks, Greg. Thanks for being here, and thanks to all the speakers for being here. It means a lot to us that you would come and take the time to address us at the board. So we're about to transition to our panel, which is the reason why I think probably a lot of you are here today. So we have to actually take a 2-minute break very quickly to just rearrange the stage. Yeah, one thing, Michael, go ahead.
So it's my hope that in relation to the couple of the comments that the public said, that we could include them in the VOA committee process, because I think about more than half of what was discussed was sort of at the core of the VOA portion. And then hopefully the staff can get back to Ann. I was under the impression that this OCB matter was well along, much further than she's described. So I'm hopeful that some clarification and communication can address that particular issue. But I think much of what was said could be incorporated in a robust conversation at the committee level on all of the things that you've raised on the VOA side. I think that would be a helpful dialogue.
Yeah, I think the board is committed to resolving the OCB issue. Unfortunately, a lot of it's privilege that we can't say in this open forum, so we'll have somebody off the record get back to Ann, and also all of the other panelists who've asked, all the other members of the public who've asked questions, we'll get back to from staff level. So we're going to take 2 minutes to just rearrange the stage for our panel discussion. So everybody sit tight on the phone. Please sit tight, and we'll be back in hopefully 2 minutes or less with our panel.